As you can tell, the main focus of this presentation is about childhood and nostalgia. And there's a lot of information about nostalgia, but I'm only going to present you just a few tidbits of information that I think you should know about. If you are really curious about the concept of nostalgia, you can do plenty of research on your own. So the objectives of this presentation is for you to demonstrate an understanding that nostalgia arises from both idealized memory of the past and the longing for reliving that past. You're going to compare between the way images, objects, places interact with our experiences in life, and also you're going to recall and analyze aspects of your own childhood. So what's it like to be a child? Well, to be a child is to think that the world is made of fantasies, smiles, and games. Obviously, this statement is very idealized. Identify 2 to 3 popular cartoons from your childhood. And when we define the concept of childhood, this is typically beginning at ages 3 or 4 to age 13. So these would be the years before you became a teenager. What were 2 to 3 favorite things you liked to do during your childhood? What were 2 to 3 of your favorite toys during your childhood? What did you like to play with? Why did you like those toys? Where was your favorite place to visit or hang out during your childhood? When you think about your favorite place or the place you like to hang out, how does that make you currently feel? So why do you feel that way? So those questions were meant to prompt your memories of childhood. And so I was trying to prompt your nostalgia, basically. And if we define the word nostalgia, it means a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. So I'm hoping these questions were prompting somewhat happy moments. So nostalgia can also be defined as a desire to return to an earlier time in life. Another definition for nostalgia is the state of being homesick or homesickness, but it can also be a feeling of pleasure and also slight sadness when you think about things that happened in the past. Because when you think about it, if you're trying to describe to somebody what nostalgia feels like, it is an intangible feeling. That means you can't physically feel it. So here's a common example of nostalgia that I think we can all relate to. It's the idea of a home. See, all human beings, we have a sense of home which evokes powerful feelings. This can be positive or negative depending on the type of home you lived in. The idea of a home, that's also shared with animals, right? Animals need to have a sense of where they live, right? Where they feel safe. So home is where one is, a primary condition where one's presence and entitlement are taken for granted. That's the thing about a home. You don't have to earn the right to be at home. Home is wherever you are. Metaphorical meanings of home include a safe place, a place free from attack or threat, a place that has been reached as the goal of a game, also just expressions connected with feeling safe. So when we think of nostalgia, for the home, right? We all might have a different idea of what that home is like. So why do we experience nostalgia? Throughout your lifetime, you will change. The type of experience of nostalgia you will have will just change as you get older. So this is actually taken from a podcast about nostalgia. So nostalgia, by motivating us to remember the past in our own life, it helps unite us to our authentic self, right? The real self. It reminds us of who we have been to compare of who we feel we are today. So again, by thinking back to how you were in the past, then you compare that to how you are currently. This also gives us a sense of who we want to be down the road in the future. Sometimes people think back and they go, I want to be more like how I was 10 years ago. Or no, I definitely am going to be different than how I am today. And so sometimes you hear people talk about the good old days, right? This quote here, we didn't realize we were making memories. We just knew we were having fun. And sometimes you hear adults talk about remembering the days before the internet, right? Or maybe you hear your parents say, or even your teachers say, in my day, we didn't have cell phones where you could just look up information. And when we needed to find out where to go, we just opened up a map. Or in my day, if you talk to your grandparents, in my day, we only had 10 TV channels and, we were lucky if we had a color television set. Think about it. 50 years from your time, you're going to be thinking back to this current moment as the good old days. So how often do you recall childhood in just like your daily life? And your nostalgia for the past might be different than someone else's. For example, if you're growing up in the 2000s, right? These might be things you remember from your childhood. For some of your teachers who grew up in the 1990s, this might be part of their childhood. Nostalgia comes in many forms. Nostalgia can be personal. It can be cultural as well, like you and your classmates might have similar forms of nostalgia. There's virtual nostalgia, like where you're on YouTube or you're on your social media and you're talking about things that happened in the past that you miss. And interestingly, nostalgia can feel good. Nostalgia actually stimulates metabolic activity in your brain and blood flow to several regions. So apparently they've done studies, and people who listen to music, this evokes nostalgia experience greater in certain areas of the brain. So they realize that when you're listening to music, your brain actually experiences a form of nostalgia. And oddly, nostalgia can actually become a reward. It feels good, right? The reward centers of your brain are activated during a nostalgic activity. So this would explain why we often feel we have pleasant emotions when we're hearing a song from the past, even if it's a song you didn't necessarily like during that time. Maybe it was just a song that was popular, in your childhood. Nostalgia can feel good even when you're at a place, like walking down the hallway of a former school or driving through a former neighborhood triggers reward pathways in the brain, right? So think about it. What's it going to be like when you walk down the halls of Westmont 20 years from now? How are you going to feel? However, there is a dark side to nostalgia. Oddly, people can become possibly addicted to the pleasure of nostalgia. This means nostalgia becomes a crutch, and the positive feelings of nostalgia actually serve as a substitute for living in the present day life, because maybe your troubles are just so overwhelming, you'd rather just spend time thinking about the past. And this actually sometimes happens to people. There is nostalgia in marketing. This is what causes us to buy certain products. There's research that nostalgia causes an increased emotional engagement with the item. The ad is viewed more favorably. So nostalgic emotions, they're actually borrowed in advertisements. So forms of childhood nostalgia. This could be like a home where you grew up. So even if you moved around during your childhood, where did you grow up? Could be a place. This place could be temporary, such as a school or a theme park. Toys and games, right? You played with physical toys, but did you play board games? Did you play games with your friends? Like when you were running around during recess? These could be objects, could be food, something that you really like to eat. Sometimes smell also evokes nostalgia. Books and stories, so maybe there was a childhood book you really enjoyed that when you see it now, you're like, I remember being read that book when I was little, or there's just a story that you associate with your childhood. TV shows and movies, and even sentimental experiences are forms of childhood nostalgia, such as a graduation, a vacation, maybe getting your first pet, going somewhere with your family or your siblings. So for your ceramic teapot project, you'll be choosing one of these forms of nostalgia for the design for the 3D form of your ceramic teapot. All right, you're going to be moving now on to the brainstorming and planning worksheet, so see Miss J for that.